So the good news is that I'm going to speak less. That's what he was saying. And this is why he added all these titles to make it nice. This is strategic diplomacy. Anyway, so yes, I think it's, as I told you, tomorrow it will be even more time for discussion and exchange on your own experiences in different fields. As you saw, there are fields mentioned. What I want is now to go from the state of affairs, what we were talking about when it comes to dealing with ethics, and to ask ourselves, you want me to? No, I don't think it's good. I'm completely on. That's fine with me, but I think that they have half my face. That's. You want me to move? Okay. So by the way, I convey my salam to the people who are not here and following us on internet. And I really want to thank you, because I didn't say it, but having this at hand, it's important. I think it's well done with the program, with the book, and I think you can have a private use of all that. I repeat. So what I was saying is that the state of affairs, talking about the different fields and asking a question. In fact, when we deal with these Islamic sciences, the first thing that we see here is that there are two things. Through history, we had a categorization of Islamic sciences, and with history, we have a hierarchy among the Islamic sciences. The question is, the crisis or the problems that we are talking about today, which is the divide or the divorce of first understanding the principles as being values and trying to connect the principles as values with their translations as law, understood as means, ahkam, and even thinking about fatwa, legal opinions, in the light of the objectives and maqasid, or the higher objectives. All this together is, how do we reconnect? How could we reconcile? Or shall we reconcile? There is something here that it's a reality. If you look at, I wrote a book in French. It's not going to be published in English because the scholar with whom I did the book is not known in the UK. He's a very high-profile intellectual in France and in Spanish speaking areas. Is Edgar Morin. He's the one who promoted something which is a reference in the work of the philosophy of complexity. And in his work, when he's talking about complexity, he's saying something that one of the main crises in the West when it comes to knowledge is the fragmentation of knowledge. In fact, fragmentation of knowledge is what we have today is people very specialized in their area of study, very much so. But at the end, they are so much specialized in a very specific area that in the field, there is not a clear goal. There is not a clear end. What do we want to achieve? And in fact, you can today work in specific areas in medical sciences, for example, in all the sciences. And at the end, this fragmentation of knowledge is undermining the very essence of questioning the goal of science. If you come now to what I was saying this morning, Muslims in all our institutions are facing exactly the same fragmentation of knowledge. So you have people very, very much, and not fragmentation of knowledge between the other knowledges outside the realm of what I'm talking about here. It's within Islamic sciences. You have something which is fragmented approaches towards the very essence of what the Islamic message is. So you have the main science, fiqh, where we are dealing with the rules and everything, which in fact is in a way disconnected from al-aqidah as something which is another science, disconnected from al-tasawwuf, or disconnected from even ilm al-akhlaq or ilm al-kalam, to the point that you go to many of our institutions today, there are some of these disciplines that are not even taught. We don't care. So not only there is fragmentation, but what could help us to come to a common agreement? Now, what is said among Muslims very often, and which is not understood, in which way are you going to unite, or you can unite the Muslims? Wherever you go today, Muslim majority countries, or in the West, or in Asia, or in Africa, one of the main crises that we are facing is divisions within. And we keep on repeating, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. So, come back to, hold to, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ. حَبْلِ اللَّهِ here is the rope of Allah, God's rope. It's in fact the Quran. This is the way it was understood by the scholars. Come back to the Quran. The Quran is the unifying source to which you have to come back in order to have this unity. We have to be very cautious with this, and we have to understand that in fact coming back to the Quran is coming back to the Quran as being the source of truth. Okay, it's the truth in there. But you are not going to unify the Muslims only by saying the Quran is our common source, so let us come back to the Quran. Why? Because by definition, the Quran is open for multiple interpretations. So what is unifying is the common truth. What should be managed is the accepted diversity among interpretations. So that's a very important point, which means never ever the unity could be reduced to uniformity in our understanding. Why? Because the unity based on truth should be accepting the diversity of interpretations of the scriptural sources. Our problem is with this diversity of thoughts and understanding, and then there is an accepted diversity and there are unacceptable interpretations. So also we have to be clear on this. If, for example, you say you can be, you will see in the book that is going to be published, I'm introducing the readers to the 3 levels of diversity. What are the schools of thought, the schools of law, and the trends? There are different levels. But when it comes to these levels of diversity, so you can be a reformist, a traditionalist, a literalist, a mystic, whatever. So we have a diversity. There are things that are clear that there is an accepted diversity. Now, if you take the Quran and if you take the scriptural sources, and you end up saying something which is against the message of, for example, you say I can kill innocent people, or what, for example, Daesh and Boko Haram are doing today, you have to say that there is a limit for this accepted diversity. This is unacceptable. And that you have to come with your arguments by showing that this is completely against the overall message, is distorting some verses in order to promote a message which is not the essential message. So there is an accepted diversity. Having said that there is an accepted diversity, is there a way to manage this diversity in order to make it a quality and not a weakness? If you don't manage diversity, we end up with divisions and fragmentation, which is exactly what is happening now. So what we have at the level of the community, at the grassroots level, saying, you know what, wherever you go, you deal with Muslims, is just a mess. There are as many opinions as Muslims, no way of and we all complain about divisions with it, to the point that it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. We are divided, and we keep on talking about divisions, and then we are really divided, and there is no way of coming together. At different levels, by the way. In the way we deal with the Quran and the Sunnah, in the way we deal with our cultures of origin, in the way we deal even between Sunni and Shia, and this is one of the great challenges of our time within. Now, we have to think about what I'm talking about here when it comes to, in fact, if you accept that there is a common truth, La ilaha illallah, which is the source, the tawheed, the oneness of God. And then the oneness of God is based also on the revelation that we have in أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الرحمن علم القرآن خلق الإنسان علمه البيان. خلق الإنسان is coming after علم القرآن, and then الرحمن, the tawheed, and then straight away the book. The book as coming from the truth and getting the truth. We accept this. On this we agree. Just after this we are not going to agree. Straight after this, the truth is that there are many interpretations. So from where are we going to try to find a way of reconciling? If now you come with the three different sciences that we have. You have philosophy asking and questioning the sources. In the way they are questioning the sources, and in the way they are questioning, is it coming from rationality, is it coming from the book, from where is it, or from traditions and cultures, they are not going to agree on issues when it comes to deal with fiqh, because fiqh is not dealing with the same. So by definition here you have two knowledges that have no, as to the substance, and you know this, a science is defined by the object of study, and the methodology is brought about through the object itself. Okay? If you go to biology, the object is defining your topic, and the methodology is coming from the object itself. The same for medicine and everything. So the object is defining two things, is the frame and the methodology. The methodology is not coming from you, the subject, it's coming from the object. So for example, you read the Quran, everything which has to do with the Quran and the methodology is coming from the Quran. Grammar, semantic, morphology, it's the text that is imposing onto you its own methodology. Now you can structure the methodology, but the object is imposing you a way of dealing with it. We agree on that? Having said that, when you come with different sciences, and we see here that there is a problem, this divide between the sciences is because they have different objects. Is there a way where we can find common ground or overlapping dimensions between the sciences in order to reconcile the sciences? And this is where the ethical question is essential. When you look at the sciences, this is talking about the source, this is talking about the means, and this is talking about the objectives. In fact, when you come with the ethical question, this is the field which is everywhere, and it could help you to get a diversity of sciences with common goals. So in fact, the methodology is the opposite of what we were saying. Many are saying, come back to the Quran to unite, and I'm suggesting go to the goals to reconcile. The goals, not because the source is by definition open for interpretations. But through these interpretations, what should be extracted are the common goals that we are trying to achieve. So for example, whatever is, you may disagree on the priorities, but there are common ethical goals on which we are going to agree. So for example, you say, you know what? As a Muslim, my goal is to acknowledge and to follow what Allah is giving me and asking me to do. So my source, La ilaha illahu, the source of my way of dealing with my ethics, it's Him. At the same time, and this is part of every tradition, my intellect, it's part also of the way I'm producing morality, or at least I can identify in the light of the text morality around me, which is el-ma'ruf. When you say this, you can see that in all the tradition, the way you deal with ethics, dealing with the scriptural sources, could be reconciling the different trends and the different, even school of law or school of thought. It's by starting by the goals that you can find the common ground at the source. It's not by starting by the source, because the source in itself is dividing. It's a text. So I can sit with a Salafi the very way he or I am reading the scriptural source is not going to be the same. So the starting point of division is the way you read. When did it happen? Between Ahl al-Ra'y and Ahl al-Sunnah. Ahl al-Ra'y and Ahl al-Hadith, sorry. When they went, La tusalliyanna, salat in one verse, on one hadith is salat al-duhr, in the other is salat al-asr, in Bani Qurayza. And some understood, it's the same text. They say, oh, we don't have to pray before arriving there. The other group said, no, he said, hurry up to be there before Salah. It's the same text. The point was that the Prophet ﷺ accepted the two interpretations based on what? It's the text was open for interpretation and the sincere way of reading the text. But there was a division. They didn't even pray together. To the point that they didn't pray together. So here, the methodology, and this is where ethics, and it's not understood by many of the fuqaha, ethics could be reconciling the sciences by saying, when it comes to the source, question the goals. What do you want to achieve? And you will see that in many trends, we agree on the fact that relying on God, coming back to the sources, is in fact for us to try to achieve these goals that are ethical goals. And it's the same with ethics, for example, with the legal framework. When it comes to the legal framework, what is the main question to the scholars is not what is the priority field. Because of course, if you are in a specific field, you will think that this is the priority field. It's what do you want to achieve? So in fact, what is the meaning of your means? What is the meaning of your science? And it comes to what? It comes to the final goal. And the final goal is always ethical from an Islamic perspective. Always. Even the fuqaha would say it's to obey the rule in order to be consistent with the ethical framework, because the two are going together. What I'm saying here to the methodology is the same way that you are seeing now the deep crisis that you have in the West as to the fragmentation of knowledge and the intuition coming from scholars who have nothing to do with Islam is saying, in fact, the way we have to question sciences is not about their methodologies, but about their goal. which is exactly the same in schools. The point is, if you are facing today a crisis in the educational system, it's not only structural. The true question is, what do you want to achieve? Do you want to achieve free citizens or people who are serving an economic system being efficient in the job market? Do you want efficient elements in the job market or free independent citizen? In fact, you are questioning the goal. If you don't question the goal, you play with the structure. So you have reforms, but at the end, it doesn't change anything. It's exactly what we are doing in Islam. We are questioning the structures and not questioning the goal. And in fact, if you come to the goals, this is what I'm saying, you are questioning the very ethical meaning of the whole message. So the methodology here is also to question the scholars, the fuqaha, and this is what we have been doing. And those who are helping us to do this, it's also people coming from outside the realm of the Islamic sciences. The same, for example, when it comes to, you will never find a alim, a faqih. You will never find a philosopher disagreeing with you when you go and you say, at the end of the day, your relationship to God, your relationship to Allah, it's for what? What are you trying to achieve? I'm not asking about the source. I'm asking about the goal. What do you want to achieve? You want to purify the self? You agree on that? All what I'm saying, when I go like this and say, you know what? The very essence of Islam is changing yourself, changing the world. Have you heard in my statement here that everything that I'm saying is about the goal? Changing the self, changing the world. And when I go, and wherever I go, I can speak to Shia, I can speak to Sunni, I can speak to Salafi, I can speak to traditionalists. On this we agree, that they are fundamental goals, and these goals, in fact, are based on an ethical take. So my question here is, instead of being obsessed with the rules or obsessed with a methodology of purification, let us try to change the approach and saying, okay, there is an accepted diversity. I have no problem with the Sufi trend. I have no problem with the fuqaha. I have no problem with the philosopher. But there is one thing that we cannot miss. What is our common goal? What is our common ethical goal? Because at the end, if the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِيُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ, the noble characters, he's telling us, my message is by the goal. Not by the means, and not by the source, and not by this philosophy that you may have that is distorting the whole message. So how do we reconcile all this? And I can tell you on practical terms, in our way of dealing with this, when it comes to sciences, it's the power of the ethical question, but not, and this is where it has to be clear, not in the way you have the ethical questions put in the West today. I have been involved in this field for 20 years in so many committees, where you come, you sit, you speak about ethics, and in fact, nothing is going to happen. You are just giving some opinions about the ethical. Could we do this or not? For example, when it comes to some bioethical questions, for example, and you see that this is just a kind of justification to carry on. At the end, cloning, for example, are we against, are we for therapeutic cloning or cloning of human beings, and all this type of discussion. And you feel when you are in this committee that it's not going to have any impact on the scientific field. And to tell you the truth, today, if you look at what is happening with our fiqh committees, it's exactly the same. Some are talking, for example, many of you live in Europe. You have, for example, the European Council for Fatwa and Research. You have so many other institutions working about fatwa in Europe. They are not even considered. They are not even, you don't even know what they are saying. So there is a gap between the production of the legal framework and the real life. or if you have one authority, it's going to come with a very close framework. My question here is, in fact, we need to come to the essential ethical question related to the goals. And if you do this, you understand that we cannot carry on having these sciences the way they are without reconciling these sciences with the very meaning of a philosophy of law, an epistemology, which is a theory of knowledge, and then the deep understanding of what spirituality means in science. You know the intuition of Muhammad Iqbal when he was dealing with politics. The first time I read this, I didn't even understand what he was. I thought he was dreaming. When he was saying spiritual democracy. Spiritual democracy. I say somebody who could be a Sufi new thing. But this connection is critical. It's in fact, be careful, in the way you are a citizen, in the way you are involved. Don't only put spirituality in the way you look at yourself, but the way you commit yourself to the political field, which is a democracy where the spiritual dimension is part of the collective structure. You might agree or not, but at least there is a hint here that there is a goal in the structure which is deeper than the structure itself. And we now know this. Every one of you, many Muslims, they don't even dare being critical towards democracy. It's as if now it's the final political structure. That's fine. I'm not going to celebrate democracy in a way which is completely simplistic. I know how much we are losing rights in our democracies today. When I'm told, for example, you know what, we have to separate religion and power, which I don't have a problem with this. I wrote 20 years ago that we don't have a problem with separating authority. But when people are saying we don't want religion at all in the public sphere, say, yes, but what about, for example, the economic power, and the economic power which is in fact directing the political system to the point that you have some leaders saying, in fact, we don't control the country. So we end up having structural democracy without the substance of a real political and open society. And you know this. You know that you can vote, but at the end, how latitude is left to a political leader to do his political program if he has not the support of transnational corporation and the economic real. Which once again, when all the people were praising the Arab Spring, I wrote the book saying, you don't get it. It has nothing to do with politics. It has to do with economic factors, and the new actors within the region are threatening the old order. So this is what it is about. It has nothing to do with politics. If we were serious about democracy, we would have started with some Gulf states. But that's not the point. The point is restructuring the whole region for economic reasons. And what I'm saying here, and all this discussion is bringing back to the discussion here, is to say, when it comes to all these sciences here, and I'm talking here first about what we call Islamic sciences. And once again, I keep on asking the question, you might answer this question, what is Islamic in Islamic sciences? If it's not only the object that we are studying, Al-Quran, the Sunnah, and other fields. If this is what makes a science Islamic, is the object, so I'm sorry, nature is as Islamic as the Quran, because it's a revealed book. It's Al-Kitab al-Manshur. So why don't we talk about Islamic environmental studies? You can put Islam everywhere. Or it might be that we have to remove it from everywhere. Or what? How are we going to call these specific knowledges? So now with this discussion, what I want you to understand is by questioning the ethical values or the ethical goals, this is where we are able to find a way of reconciling the different sciences. the sources, the means, and the goals. Which means, in fact, to question in which way, in ethical terms, spirituality should be part of our active presence within the society or within even the very understanding of the legal framework. Instead of having more spirituality only in our organizations, we might need more spirituality in our legal framework. And instead of having only a legal framework which is more spiritual, we might need more philosophy in the legal framework as well. So the reconciliation of what I said, the theory of knowledge in the name of the source, questioning the goals, the ethical goals, questioning the hierarchy of sciences between the three and how we reconcile and put every science at the right level. And then also the ultimate goal of the whole message through the different sciences, which is the way you reconcile the sciences. So, just to summarize this, start with the goals. And the goals are always ethical goals, which is, once again, the maqasid. Once again, not to undermine the rules, but to put the rules at the right place. And accepting, when you question the goals, that there is a diversity of ways. Meaning, in fact, that a sharia is not going to be only the legal framework, is the path within which you have the sources as the starting point, the means as defining the path, and the ultimate goal as what you are trying to reach, which means you cannot speak about Sharia without speaking about maqasid al-Sharia as a way of helping you to reconcile the knowledges. So we urgently need something which has to do with a reassessment of this categorization of knowledge that we have in Islam, the priority that we are putting, and also the way we are dealing, the methodology based on this epistemology that I was talking about. And I summarize epistemology by saying, how and from where are you getting your knowledge? And then, what do you want to achieve here? So, this is a point which is, how do we think this reconciliation and how do we implement this? It's also based on a methodology which is not obsessed with the common source, but which is trying to build the common goals. And I would suggest that in everything that we are doing, as much as at the individual level, you are always questioning your intentions. At the collective and scientific level, we have to question our goals and ethical goals. In everything. In everything. In the legal framework as much as in philosophy. Why? Because it could end up being very arrogant. If at the end you have a philosophy of knowledge, or if you have a way of dealing with ethics or with your rationality, you can end up being very arrogant. So philosophy could be humble philosophy when the goals are clear, and it could be arrogant. So rationality could be, this is where it's quite problematic. So you have to question the goals. Exactly the same with fiqh, and exactly the same with tasawwuf. Now, this is, for me, the way you can link the three things that I was referring to, the principles, the means, and the objectives, through the ethical question. I know, by experience, that some of the scholars in every field, they have a problem with this. Because at the end, is questioning the autonomy of their specific science by saying it's a science that has its own logic and its own structure, by questioning through what I was saying, the ethical framework. And for example, the most the most aggressive, sometimes, reaction I got from some of the scholars were coming from the fuqaha, thinking that the more you speak about ethics, the less you speak about rules, and it's a way of undermining. They have exactly the same understanding that when you speak about ethics is as when you speak about the maqasid. It's the ultimate goals and the higher objectives. While in fact, it's the other way around. It's in fact giving the right place to the rules, not by undermining the rules, but putting them at the right place where in between the philosophy of law and the clear understanding of the spiritual message, you understand the very essence of what the law should be, saying that you can't follow the path if you don't have the rules. So it's bringing back the rules as essential, but not exclusive, the exclusive center and the whole Islamic message. So but once again, as it was said, it has to do with power. So when you are dealing with all these fields, you understand that you are dealing with power struggle within, among the scholars. And get it right, this idealized tradition that we have, it's everything went well, and this is the way we have Islamic sciences. It never happened. It never happened. This has nothing to do with the truth. This is romanticizing our past. It has to do with power. It has to do with power struggle. It has to do with rejection. It has to do with condemnation. It has to do with putting people in jail. Some scholars ended up in jail when they were questioning the whole thing. Now it's very important in our time to understand that it's not true. Anyone who thinks in this room that we are not facing exactly the same problem as in the West, fragmentation of knowledge, is not sincere or not knowledgeable about the reality of Islamic sciences now. It's not because we are isolating our science that we are now facing the whole problem. We are not equipped to deal with the complexification of knowledge and the world today. We are not. And we are not because we end up using the science as means and not questioning the goals. It's everywhere. You want example? Look at what is said about anything which has to do with politics today coming from the Muslim majority countries, about economics. What is said? What is said about the environment? What is said, in fact, except quoting some of the ahadith and some of the verses, where do you see coming from the Muslim majority countries or from Muslims something which has to do with is efficient as to what we want and not the way we protect ourselves? In politics on the defensive, in environment on the defensive, we just are apologetic. We know what? We have the verses and we have the hadith. But do we have a clear understanding? And then the second thing that I want to say, you can't speak about the goals if you only speak about the texts. You have to take into account the context. Why? Because the context is where your goals are becoming realistic. You take the state of affairs. When the Prophet, peace be upon him, arrived in Medina, he never came and said, you know what, you remove all this from there. I don't want to see the market. I don't want to see Aus wal Khazraj. I remove that. We are going to start from scratch. No. The way he dealt with the sources was with a deep understanding of the context. No way to speak about the goals if you don't get the context within it. So this is why the maqasidi approach is always bringing, as part of the whole process, the relationship between text and context. How can you set goals if you don't know where you are going to implement them? How? That's impossible. So the ethical question is reconciling not only the three sciences, but text and context. There is no choice. You have to deal with this. So you have to deal with the environment. You have to deal with your society. So look at our society now, our situation, postmodern reality. Everything is fragmented, no truth. And then we come and say, you know what? We have the text. We have the ahadith. And we end up with a very narrow response to the global question by saying this is the way we are going to protect ourselves. The problem is at the grassroots level, it's simplistic, but it works. Why? Because you feel protected, because where are the milestones? Where are the old yardsticks? How are we going to deal with this? When everything is scattered, the best is just come with black and white, halal, haram, give me the... So that's okay at the grassroots level for a while. Is this our mission? When in the text we don't get it, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا. We made you a nation of the middle path. Middle path, it means what? Middle path means in everything, this life and the hereafter, the text and the context, taking into account the reality and changing it. The middle path is about everything. The reflection between the macrocosm and the microcosm in you. This is the middle path, is where you are reconciling all this. Don't end up with, you know what is the middle path? And then you are colonized by the political discourse that you have in Britain is, you know what is the middle path? Is we are against extremists. What's that? Such a big philosophical notion reduced to against extremists. This is exactly what they want you to say about yourself. That's nothing. Not being against extremism. And some of our scholars say, al-wasatiyya, 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 it's all about we are not extremists. I'm sorry. It's deeper than that. It's about the whole concept, the notion. It's about Sharia, meaning a concept of life, a concept of the universe, where you are taking all this into account. And to take all this into account, the middle path is you know where this path is heading. Where are you going? What do you want to achieve? And what are you going to bring into the discussion? This is the way we have to reconcile sciences and to reconcile text and context. And everything that is coming from the Maqasidi, which are all the scholars who have been talking about we need to think about the text through the goals, we're always bringing into the discussion the fact that you have to take into account the context. So reconciling all this is not this overemphasis on the text, dismissing the context, overemphasis on rules without getting the ethics, is really to try to change our methodology. And our methodology is three things, as I said, remember. It has to do with a theory of knowledge, the epistemology that I was talking about. It has to do with the restructuring of the relationship between the different sciences, and then how do we do this in the light of the goals. I hope you understand what I'm saying here. The floor will be open for you to question this, but this is where it's important. Last thing that I wanted to say here, if the second element, it's right, it means that not only you need to reassess this chart that we have here by saying we need to reconsider the hierarchy between the sciences, but we also need to have a new relationship and a new way of dealing with all the other sciences. By the way, how do you call the other sciences? You have the religious sciences and the profane sciences. How do you call this? And you know, terminology matters. How do you deal with mathematics? You have the hard sciences, experimental sciences, and human sciences. How are you going to bring them into the discussion? Do you think that with Islamic sciences we are going to solve the problem? Could you today, with these sciences, translate what I said, changing yourself and changing the world? Impossible. Even changing yourself in the world means that you know where you are all about. Let me give you an example. All of you are using internet. Alhamdulillah ala kulli hal. All of us. على كل حال. And some say, ضرورة, there is no choice. Communication, we all using internet. Okay. Do you know that internet, for example, the social networks, in 3 studies that were produced in the States, are producing on the human psychology something which has a very deep impact. The informal virtual connection is nurturing a sense that there is a power somewhere that is connecting the people, which is increasing what they call conspiracy theory. But be careful with this, because there are conspiracies. I keep on repeating, it's a conspiracy to think that there is no conspiracy, because there are conspiracies. But the point is multiplied by the means. So in fact, we know this in basic psychology. The means have impact on the way you think. Second thing which is important, now that you can go on the social network and not put your name, be anonymous, speak without being seen, apparently, if you think that you are not seen and not heard and you can just hide, it's giving a sense of less responsibility into the action. So, more conspiracy, somewhere somebody is deciding, and I can hide behind being anonymous. This has an impact on your psychology, which is exactly the opposite of the spiritual stance. You are responsible, and you are seen whatever you do, and at the end, you are accountable. You cannot hide. So if you are on internet and you send some nasty messages, being anonymous, if you are with God, you know that you are seen. If you are with internet, you know, oh, that's good. What I'm saying here is that the means have an impact on the way we think and the way it's developed even with young generations. To the point that you have in one of this report something which is quite interesting is nurturing the victim mentality. That in fact you are not the object, you are victim of something which is bigger than you. One of the main crises and one of the main problems that we have among Muslims is that nurturing the victim mentality. We are victims. They don't like Islam, they don't like us, and they are all against us. This is coming from also, it's first nurtured within, but the means are coming back and nurturing a sense of this kind of intellectual and psychological colonization through the means. Which brings also a question, is it possible to distinguish between ethical use of the means and the means themselves? Which is a big question. It's not as easy as that. Once I was talking to Latouche, who is an economist, and I was telling him, no, you know what? In our relationship with the West and from within the West, we can take some of the tools and some of the instruments and add a positive ethical use of the means. And he looked at me and he smiled and said, simplistic. Nonsense. In fact, if you take the TV set as a means, you understand that the very philosophy of the means is within it. You cannot separate. So if you have educational programs, that's fine. 5% of the people. 95% of the people are going to follow the big thing, which is how do you attract emotions, and you are attracting the people from another side. So you can have a spiritual resistance, but the means is in itself carrying an ethical or non-ethical objective. That's quite scary. Because at the end, how are you going to do that? So if you go with this, with ulama, who have been trained in reading the books, and you come with this complexified way of dealing with reality and say, could you give me a fatwa? It's not going to work. And this is exactly what we are doing. We give them reports and say, give us a fatwa on this. That's not going to work. Why? Because you can only extract or get a sense of what are the ethical goals if you have a clear understanding of what are the challenges in a very specific field, in education, in the way you deal with the means now. In culture, for example, in culture, we'll talk about this tomorrow, but very much what we are doing, once again, even I said this about economy, it's exactly what we are doing in cultural terms. We are Islamizing the means. So the only way you resist to a complex world is to think about the means and how you are going to protect. My take on what I'm saying here, if you come from ethics and from the goals, you are obliged to bring into the fundamental questions all the other sciences, and especially human sciences. You have to. No other way to come to reconcile knowledges. If not, we are just following in the footsteps of the Western fragmentation of knowledge. We put some ethical reference. This is halal, this is haram, don't do this, do this. But it's not going to come with a vision for the future. And unfortunately, the mindset of the ulama today and the mindset of many of you, it's a mindset of reaction, reacting or protecting, which is not a force of proposal, it's just a kind of defensive approach to all this. So I'm questioning the methodology, questioning the relationship between text and context, and questioning our relationship to all the other sciences. Saying that you, in your field, you are maybe sociologist, you are physician, you are political scientist, whatever is your field, if you don't get it right, that in the name of the common goals, you should be involved in the discussion about how are we going to be consistent in ethical terms between the source, the means, and the goals, we're not going to make it. And bringing the knowledges together. Because you can't sit down here in this room and say, you know what, the scholars are not doing the job. At the end, we have the scholars we deserve. If there are followers only asking questions on the legal framework and not on the vision, at the end you will have answers that are going to come on the legal framework as if it's the only and main reference that you have. So here, it means that what should be part of our methodology is what we call, and it's known within academia, even though it's not very much translated, transdisciplinary approach. The transdisciplinary approach, in the name of the common goals, based on an ethical approach, based on the higher objective, and then through this, you bring, again, this relationship between text and context, the three main sciences that I was referring to, philosophy, mystics, and mysticism, and fiqh all together. And then opening this up towards all the other sciences and to bring them into the deep discussion that is needed. This is the only way we can liberate ourselves from the defensive posture within which we are now. But you understand that. And I will end with this. Very good. I forgot the 5 minutes. Yeah. What was my point? My conclusion, huh? I forgot my point. What was my?
Talking about the multidisciplinary approach.
Yeah, I know. Yes, I wanted to say something about the transdisciplinary and multidisciplinary approach. I don't remember. So maybe it will come. So let me come to concluding remarks on this. In the light of all what I was saying, what is central in the whole discussion is where we look at our history and the sciences that we have and the way it's structured today. The fact is that there is a deep crisis, and we know today that our contribution in scientific terms, ethical terms. Let me start with the beginning. Our contribution in spiritual terms, in ethical terms, in scientific terms, in educational terms, it's very superficial now. There's not a great deal of contribution. Now we have two ways. Is once again to be sure that we have the truth without the methodology, and we wait for the other system to collapse, which I heard from some scholars, saying the West is collapsing. Let's wait and see. The problem is that when you say the West is collapsing, I'm sorry, we are part of the West. We are collapsing as well. So if you are happy with this, welcome to the collapsing world. And some are saying it's decadent, and this is rubbish. I think we have to be very clear on this. What is our constructive contribution to our society and our civilization? At the end, we are part of the Western civilization, the European countries, and here we have to bring the best. So how are you going to do that? Not being on the defensive, but trying to think about our contribution. Our contribution not in a defensive mode, but in a constructive one. Having said that, and questioning this from the very beginning, the question is, how do we work from within to unite without uniformity within, and try to respect the different fields by questioning them in another way, which is, I'm not going to question your field, I'm going to question your goal, what is the ethical end result of what you are doing. This is one. Bringing the three fields together, and once again, no tasawwuf without the legal framework and without the philosophy of knowledge. That's essential for me, is that not to accept this fragmentation, because by the way, Orientalists and some are very happy to divide us by saying the true face of Islam is tasawwuf, and a type of tasawwuf that you know. And some are playing with this. Not only in Muslim majority countries, in the West, you have people playing with this, and they are supporting policies that are targeted against other Muslims, but they want to be acknowledged as good Muslims. And they are ready to say whatever. You can be critical. I just gave a lecture yesterday about political Islam. I'm very critical about what it is now. But there is no way for me to accept what is coming from the government, stigmatizing the people and saying, because you are an Islamist, we have the right to support dictators and to keep quiet when they are put in jail. That's just unacceptable. So when we speak about dignity, whatever is you take on a position, at least you respect the dignity of the people. So to keep quiet about what is happening in Egypt, for example, or what is happening, or what happened in Tunisia, and what happened in Libya, and in Syria, and then to come and to lecture us about be good Muslims, and what about you being good leaders? What about you being and promoting good governance, ethical governance, instead of playing with us? So what I'm saying here is that this discussion here about the methodology and the way we have to deal with this is questioning and trying to reconcile all this. Adding to this reconciliation between, in ethical terms, between text and context, and then, as I said, all the sciences, by respecting the specificities and reconciling the aims, and in which way this could be done is the discussion. I forgot what I wanted to say, but I'm sure with your question it might come back. Thank you. Why are you? That's new? Yeah, clapping. You don't know my fatwa on that, huh?
Right, so we'll start taking a few questions before in one go, and then I'll try and prioritize the key ones first, if that's okay, and then we'll take one at a time. If I could start with yourself.
Yeah. I was reading an article by an Indian professor at Oxford University, and she was speaking about global governance, and she used the kind of method that you used, as in means and ends. She said governance is a means towards an end. My question is basically, what can governance do in terms of means, what's appropriate, and what ends should it be prioritizing in the 21st century?
Wow, that's another seminar.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just have a question regarding respecting the differences within the various Muslim methodologies. If the goal is the same, and presumably ethical goals are the same. However, we do have groups who get hung up on the methodologies. How can we reconcile the fact that we may want to unify with them and to work towards a common goal with them, but they're not accepting of our methodologies?
Do you have an example?
Do I have an example? I can think of an example local to where I live. We have a group, I guess you would call them Salafi, and the group that I volunteer with would be a different methodology, and they keep saying that our aqidah isn't correct, etc., and they get hung up on that fact. And we may want to work, for example, combating Islamophobia in the media, etc., and they don't want to work with us because of our supposedly dodgy aqidah. So how do we...
Dodgy aqidah.
Yeah. Supposedly.
Okay.
There are a few second timers. I'm just going to, yeah.
Okay. You're talking about the fragmentation of knowledge in the modern world as something like a negative thing. So does that mean I want to understand, is it beneficial for us not to do that from an individual point of view, in the sense that scholars should be well versed in all areas in order to be the most effective people possible? Or are you saying that we should work as a community to combine the knowledges together and take knowledge from different people who are experts in different areas and try and keep an eye on the ultimate goal? Is it from an individual point of view, or is it from a collective point of view?
Yes.
Going to the second timers, yeah. Brother with glasses, yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to check. I'm sure you've been thinking about what you've been saying and presenting. I just wanted to check something very quickly. If you imagine two circles, the Ummah and Western civilization, and they intersect at a small periphery. What I get from this session is you're asking us to change the center of both those circles in terms of Islamic sciences, how they've been produced. Even now, we are on the periphery in terms of the Muslim Ummah. We're not located in the centers of Islamic knowledge, whether it's in Medina or in Cairo or in India, wherever it is. We're not located in the center. Yet, the challenge is, let's change how that is produced, or the methodology. Same with the West. I know you don't like the word minorities, but in terms of...
It depends depends.
Sorry?
It depends when.
Okay. But even from a values or ethical perspective, perhaps we're offering a minority view. There may be common kind of values with other people of other faiths, but still, in terms of the paradigmatic nature of the Western civilization, we are still on the periphery. So is the task of this twin task of changing the center of both Western civilization as well as Muslim, isn't that too much to ask for?
So again, it's about the fragmentation of knowledge point that you mentioned. You say that between we've got to actually find a common ground and then go to the goals itself, which would be helpful in finding a common ground. How do you achieve
No, I'm saying that the common ground are the goals, is the goal.
if we refer to the goal?
Right.
So my question is that how do you achieve that in a practical manner? Because you said that you've been part of many committees, and then you sit.
And I failed. Yeah, thank you.
And you sit on the committees, and then there's a good discussion, and then because there's no authority, no central agreement, so do you actually require some form of authority to actually implement that unified, get the people to agree on a goal? How does it actually come about in a practical perspective?
We can take this round, otherwise questions get lost. We have 2 questions.
Okay.
We take another round.
So your question is it's a big one. How you were referring to a professor in Oxford speaking about good governance and speaking exactly the same way, means and goals. And it's a long discussion. It's a field in itself, politics. But what we al-Hukm al-Rashid, which is the good governance that we have a long history of thinking about this, which is not only al-Mawardi in Islam, which is speaking about the structure of the political structure of governance in Islam. We are always referring to this. But there are principles that are quite important in governance when it comes to some notion that we have, and we have to think about the way we are dealing with them between the means that we have, the structure, and also the goals. So in terms of the goals, when we speak, for example, about pluralism, which is something which is essential, it's related to the notion of shura, amruhum shura baynahum, transparency, it's important. The majority process are principles that we need to think of the structure in the light of the goals. And we can borrow from other tradition, other history, some of the translation of this in structural terms, making it...
mean, for example, if the objective is a moral society, whatever that moral society might be, people who are not wasteful, kind to each other, what means should the government be allowed to use to achieve that goal in terms of coercion?
This is, yeah.
Very complicated kind of.
Yeah. So that's I would say it's... Yes, but I would say here that it's a comprehensive approach that we need. I wouldn't start by saying what are the coercive means that we have. I would prefer to start with what are the steps and what are the overall objectives that we want to achieve. And then in this way, you can, through a regulation, through a legal framework, set a legal framework which is in tune, or at least thought in the light of the objectives. So once again, for example, today, and this is a discussion, we are not going to talk about, do we have politics tomorrow? No, there is not. But, sorry. But, for example, in the discussion that we had, we brought together scholars from Tunisia and from Egypt and from Muslim majority countries, and also other people who were analysts and political scientists. And there is a big question, for example, a very important question when it comes to freedom. Because if freedom is a principle that we should be free, but it's also a goal, which is we have to protect your freedom. Now, what are the limits? Where are you going to set the limits? And this is where, in the discussion that we had with some of the people who were in the Nahda, Najjar, for example, who was working with the constitutional committee in Morocco, he kept on repeating al-hurriya qabl al-sharia. Freedom comes first, before sharia. Which is, in fact, in order to implement sharia, you have to start with the freedom, which is the essential nature of human being, what I was saying before. But now, okay, that's fine. What is it going to be, how it's going to be translated? This is where I cannot answer in a way which is reducing the whole discussion. It's an overall discussion that we need to have about, in the light of the goals, which type of freedom are you going to give to the citizens, knowing that in any society there is something which is called absolute freedom. You don't. In this country, you don't. So there are limits always. So this, in the light of your in your project, political project, based on transparency, based on dignity, based on equality, based on social justice, you have to come with an understanding of how you are going to deal with this. So I don't have a specific model. The only thing that I see now is this obsession by some Islamist groups of power and reducing politics to state power. It's in fact counterproductive, to the point that today they are facing with contradictions. They don't know how to deal with them. And you understand my point? So I don't have the whole answer, but at least this is a direction. And what you said is that with many people who are from another religious background, people who are Christians and Jews or atheists, when you talk about this, when you talk about the goals and when you talk about the essential principles and essential objectives that you want to achieve, you will see that there is an overlapping reality, that we find common ground on this. So if you are obsessed with, it's coming from the Quran, so it's wrong, or what you are saying, it's coming from your mind, you're not going to get that if we don't understand that the ultimate source for Muslims, God, Allah, is, and by the way, God is the English name for Allah. Allah is not the be careful with this, because it's also coming from some Salafi that they keep on saying, no, you shouldn't say God, you should have to say God is one, and it's the English way of the English, and if I speak in French, I would say Dieu, and that's it. And Christians speaking Arabic, they speak about Allah in Arabic when it comes to speak their language. I'm saying this because it's also the other way around. In the States, I was there a few months ago, a woman was dismissed from her job by saying, our God is the same God as the Muslims. I know. It was understood the other way around on the side of Christians, which in fact Muslims had to come and to explain, yes, we also think it's the same God. Yeah. Sometimes we are in a very strange position. Anyway, so on this, you can see that there are common understanding, and then about good governance, for example, it's a good way of starting this discussion in epistemological terms and a transdisciplinary approach. Your question about on the ground is very difficult. So this is where you have to take me right here. I'm not in this discussion today and tomorrow. I'm talking about the theoretical framework. It's upstream of from our reality on the ground. I'm not going to give you tools and instruments to deal with your Salafi neighbor. You get me right. It's at another level here, where you, as an activist, my point is that I have seen and came across so many activists that you see that the background is not there. So this is what I call not activists. I'm talking about them as agitated activists, much more than activists in the name of a vision, doing so many things, but what is the goal and how do we see the whole thing? So I'm working at that level to bring our action into an overall vision. And when I wrote Western Muslims and the Future of Islam, my sense at that time was to speak about the vision, what should be our vision. So I'm talking about that level. Now, with scholars, sometimes with shuyukh, who some could be, with some Salafi, don't even try to go from the rules to the goals or to the methodology. That's that they are thinking that you want to play with the books, the book, you want to play with the verses, they're not going to follow. Now, within the Salafi trend, as well as within the Reformist or the Sufi, you have scholars who are able to deal with it at that level. At the grassroots level, when you have people who say you want to talk about the goals and they want to speak about the rules, this is where, in the way you deal with them, it's going to be very difficult to shift the center of the discussion towards, the goals while they want to speak about the rules. But it might be that in the way you deal with them at the grassroots level is to keep on repeating that what are your goals? That's also very important, because many, they have the impression that you are not sincere, that you are playing with the verses, and you are not serious. So I think the more you are serious and committed to the text and listening, because my take, I completely disagree with the people who are dismissing the Salafi by saying they are, no, I think that they are useful. I don't agree with the way they look at things, but I respect many of the scholars in the way they are dealing with the scriptural sources, because they are serious. And they are pushing me in a very positive, constructive way to be serious with the text. So this is why it's a virtuous circle. You take from them the seriousness that you need to deal with the text, and you show through your action how you are serious, and you have maybe another method, another way of looking at it, but you are as sincere and you want the best, which means no judgmental positioning about who they are, making them all the same. Second, never cutting the dialogue with them, even if they cut the dialogue. Many of the Salafi, for example, haven't, I have so many people putting me outside of Islam. They haven't even read one sentence, but they are takfiri by procuration, so by proxy. So this is what they are doing. So this is why you don't cut. You try to keep, and this is a way of dealing at the grassroots level, because you have, and this is my conviction, on the long run, this position of closing all doors is not bearable. It's not. So they are very tough for a few years, and after 5 or 6 years, things are moving. They are realizing when they see, for example, I have so many people who were rejecting what I was saying 20 years ago, and now they come to me and say, you know what? My children love you. I say, thank you. So after having outside Islam, so now, meaning what? That they got the essence of the message sometimes through the experience of their own children, because the children cannot live in isolation. It's not going to work. And you are giving them something, you are equipping them with a sense of, confidence with their value. So this is why, but my take on this is not to enter into the discussion with this obsession that we need to find the common ground and this is the way. No, it's at the level of the intellectual discussion, this could be a way. But at the grassroots level, this is something else, which is no definitive judgment, always communicating and being a witness of your own. لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ. Sometimes you have to be shahid, a witness, before your own fellow Muslims. Even them, that you are consistent, that you are sincere, that you are upright, that you are serving, that you are smiling. Even if they don't smile at you, smile. It's good to smile at Salafi. I'm serious.